Imagine you wanted to start a business tomorrow. There's just one tiny problem. You're almost completely broke. Fortunately, the internet has excellent news. Apparently, being broke is no longer an obstacle to becoming extremely rich. Apparently, a tiny budget, an internet connection, and sufficient self-belief should have you shopping for a supercar by Thursday. Barry has already resigned from his imaginary job. Impressive, considering nobody had actually employed him. But underneath all that nonsense is a genuinely interesting question. Can you actually build a valuable business with almost no money? On the surface, low startup cost sounds fantastic. Less money at risk, less debt, and an easier first step. But there's a catch. If you can start it tomorrow with almost no money, millions of other people probably can too. And that's one of the strangest rules in business. Easy to start can also mean incredibly difficult to win. So we're investigating 7 businesses ordinary people can start with relatively little capital, and we're making the test deliberately difficult. Because we're not simply asking whether they can make money. Almost any useful work can make money. We're asking something harder. Could an ordinary person realistically grow one of these from a tiny side income into something capable of replacing a salary? And if it succeeds, could it eventually give you something arguably even more valuable than money, some of your time back? We'll judge every opportunity on 6 things: startup cost, demand, recurring revenue, competition, scalability, and how dependent the business remains on your time. Because a business being cheap to start tells you almost nothing about whether it's actually a good business. Our first business starts with a problem almost every company understands. You can be brilliant at what you do and still be invisible. For many local businesses, one genuine new customer can be valuable, and that makes finding those customers a business opportunity itself. The model is called local lead generation. In plain English, you help businesses find people who need them. Find somebody already searching for a service, connect them with a capable local business, then get paid for creating that connection. The attraction is obvious: no warehouse, no inventory, no expensive machinery. You can begin with remarkably little physical infrastructure. Unfortunately, thousands of other people noticed exactly the same thing. Low startup cost has once again invited everybody to the party. And here's the catch. When creating the business costs almost nothing, getting somebody to notice your business can become surprisingly expensive. But solve the customer problem consistently, and the model becomes interesting. One successful system can potentially serve multiple businesses without multiplying your hours.
So lead generation scores brilliantly for startup costs and scalability, strongly for demand, but much less comfortably for competition and predictable customer acquisition.
Our first lesson is already clear. If a business requires almost no financial capital, it may demand another kind of capital instead. Business number 2 solves a problem millions of people repeatedly create without even trying. Cars have an irritating habit of getting dirty. And conveniently for entrepreneurs, quite a lot of their owners have absolutely no desire to clean them.
Enter mobile car detailing. Instead of customers traveling to a car wash, the cleaning service travels to them.
That sounds like a small difference, but convenience can be valuable. The customer keeps working while somebody else handles the annoying job.
Compared with many businesses, the starting equipment can be relatively modest. Cleaning products, vacuum, towels, brushes, and some basic equipment.
Barry immediately likes this business. Unfortunately, he has spent 20 minutes polishing one wing mirror and declared himself premium. The economics become more interesting when customers return regularly. One clean car is a transaction. A scheduled monthly service creates repetition.
And commercial customers can be even more interesting. One company might need several vehicles cleaned repeatedly, rather than just one.
But there's an obvious weakness. At the beginning, every additional customer usually means more cleaning, more traveling, and more of your time. And just like our previous investigation, geography matters. 5 customers close together can be considerably better than 8 customers scattered across an entire county. The real transition happens when you stop being the only person holding the cleaning equipment and build routes, teams, and repeatable service systems.
Mobile detailing scores well for startup cost and demand, reasonably for repeat revenue, but scalability depends heavily on turning your personal labor into a system.
Which gives us lesson number 2. A cheap business can replace your job while quietly becoming another job in disguise.
Business number 3 has one enormous advantage. The customer can literally watch the result appear in front of them.
Pressure washing is simple to understand. Dirty driveway in, clean driveway out. Customers don't need a 12-page explanation. That obvious before and after result can make marketing easier because customers instantly understand what they're paying to improve.
The startup cost can also be manageable. A pressure washer, hoses, cleaning chemicals, and transport can get you surprisingly far.
Barry has discovered the pressure washer trigger. The neighborhood is now cleaner, wetter, and considerably less impressed with him. Potential customers are everywhere. Homes, shops, restaurants, landlords, warehouses, and commercial properties all accumulate dirt eventually.
But recurring revenue is less automatic. Most driveways don't need cleaning every month, so repeat purchases can be slower.
Commercial contracts improve the picture. Shops, communal areas, and business sites may need scheduled cleaning rather than occasional one-off jobs.
Seasonality can also matter. Weather changes demand, working conditions, and how many jobs you can actually complete comfortably. And like detailing, one operator eventually hits a ceiling. You can only spray one surface in one location at a time.
Scaling means creating crews, efficient routes, standardized equipment, and commercial relationships so revenue can grow faster than your own working hours.
Pressure washing scores well for startup cost, visual marketing, and demand, but recurring revenue and owner dependence need deliberate system building.
Lesson number 3. Businesses are easier to sell when the customer can instantly understand the problem, the result, and the value. Business number 4 may be the least glamorous so far, which, strangely enough, is exactly why it's interesting. Pet waste removal solves a remarkably persistent problem. The customer cleans the garden today, and the dog immediately begins tomorrow's workload. That means weekly or regular service can make sense naturally. You don't need to invent a reason for the customer to return. Startup cost can also be extremely low. Basic tools, protective equipment, transport, and somewhere sensible to dispose of waste. Barry has declined this opportunity on professional grounds. Apparently, inspirational wealth building has limits, very smelly limits.
But this business has a familiar weakness. If your customers are spread across an entire city, you'll spend more time driving than cleaning.
Cluster enough customers into one neighborhood, though, and the economics change dramatically. Short routes, more visits, less wasted time. And because customers may want the service repeatedly, recurring revenue can become much stronger than many one-off local businesses. The obvious limitation is labor. Somebody still has to physically visit every garden and perform the service. Scaling means building efficient routes, hiring reliable people, and making each neighborhood dense enough that every hour of labor becomes productive.
Pet waste removal scores extremely well for startup cost and recurring demand, but route density and reliable labor determine whether it becomes scalable.
Lesson number 4. A small transaction can become valuable when customers return frequently and your delivery becomes extremely efficient. Business number 5 exists because almost every brand now wants attention, and attention increasingly lives inside short-form video. The problem is simple. Recording video can be quick. Turning hours of raw footage into polished clips can be painfully slow. So you offer the missing piece: editing. The client creates the raw material. You turn it into content people actually watch. If you already own a capable computer, the financial barrier can be extremely low. Skill becomes the real investment. Barry has already edited one clip. It contains 14 zooms, 6 explosions, and absolutely no reason for any of them. The model becomes much more attractive when clients need content every month. One editor can become part of an ongoing publishing system. But editing isn't a commodity when it's done well. Better storytelling, pacing, and audience understanding can justify very different prices. The downside is obvious. Thousands of editors compete globally, and low-cost freelancers can push prices downward very quickly. And AI is getting better at the mechanical parts of editing. That makes creative judgment and strategy increasingly important. Like every service business, one editor eventually hits a ceiling. There are only so many hours available to edit client work. Scaling means standardizing the process, hiring other editors, and keeping client relationships while the production work gradually moves beyond you. Short-form editing scores brilliantly for startup cost and demand, reasonably for recurring revenue, but competition, AI pressure, and owner dependence are real weaknesses. Lesson number 5. When money isn't the barrier to entry, skill and differentiation often become the real barriers instead. Business number 6 begins with something surprisingly ordinary. Millions of people need help with small everyday tasks that still have to get done. Their families may desperately want to help, but jobs, children, and distance have an irritating habit of occupying the same hours. That's where a non-medical senior concierge service can fit. Practical help with errands, shopping, household tasks, and everyday organization. But here's what makes this business different. Customers aren't simply buying completed tasks. They're buying reliability, familiarity, and above all, trust. Financially, the entry barrier can be modest. You don't need inventory, premises, or an expensive collection of specialist machinery. But low financial barriers don't mean no barriers. Reputation, reliability, and appropriate checks can matter enormously when somebody invites you into their life. Barry has volunteered to help. His first contribution was reorganizing somebody's biscuits, according to what he calls investment potential. Once trust is established, repetition becomes possible. The same customer may need practical help every week rather than just once. And once again, geography matters. A day serving nearby customers looks very different from a day spent driving between distant appointments. Scaling is harder because the thing customers value most may be you. Replacing yourself without damaging trust requires careful hiring and systems. Do that successfully, and a solo concierge can become a local service with trained helpers, efficient territories, and recurring customer relationships.
Senior concierge services score well for startup cost, durable demand, and recurring relationships, but trust, labor, and local density make scaling more difficult.
Lesson number 6. In businesses built on trust, reputation can become a moat that cheap competitors find surprisingly difficult to cross. Which brings us to business number 7. And compared with everything we've investigated, this one sounds almost aggressively boring. Commercial cleaning. Offices, shops, and other workplaces paying somebody else to keep their premises clean. The first advantage is beautifully simple. Buildings keep getting dirty. Dirt, unlike many fashionable industries, has excellent job security, and businesses rarely want their premises cleaned once forever. Many need the service repeatedly, which naturally supports recurring contracts.
You can also begin relatively small. Basic cleaning equipment, supplies, transport, and insurance can take you surprisingly far.
More importantly, one good commercial customer can represent many future visits rather than forcing you to find a new buyer every day. Barry approves of recurring contracts. He is less enthusiastic about cleaning and has already promoted himself to management.
Of course, start alone and you've created another job. More customers mean more floors, more bins, and more hours of cleaning. The business becomes more interesting when you stop selling your own cleaning hours and start building a reliable system for delivering the service.
Cleaning has another useful characteristic. Much of the work can be taught, repeated, checked, and organized into predictable routines. Cluster several contracts in one area and travel falls, supervision becomes easier, and each team can spend more time producing value.
And this is the crucial point. Revenue can eventually grow by adding customers and teams rather than simply adding more hours to your day. But scalability creates a different headache. Finding reliable people, maintaining standards, and keeping customers happy becomes the real work.
Commercial cleaning scores well for durable demand, recurring revenue, and scalability, with manageable startup costs. Its biggest challenge is people and operational execution,
which leaves us with an uncomfortable discovery. The more we examine boring businesses, the less boring some of their economics begin to look. So now we have 7 businesses, all relatively inexpensive to start, but with dramatically different economics hiding underneath the surface. If your biggest constraint is money, digital services and simple local services have an obvious advantage. They require very little physical infrastructure. If predictability matters most, recurring local services become more attractive. Cleaning, concierge work, and route-based services can build repeat relationships. If scalability matters most, lead generation and systemized service companies stand out because additional revenue doesn't always require additional hours from you. But notice what's happened. Every time we remove one barrier, another barrier appears somewhere else in the business. A business requiring almost no money may instead demand enormous amounts of skill, persistence, reputation, selling ability, physical effort, or time.
So which one wins? For overall balance, commercial cleaning is surprisingly strong. But the real winner isn't actually one specific business.
It's learning to recognize strong economics, durable demand, repeat customers, sensible costs, scalability, and a path towards separating income from your time. So don't begin by asking which business is easiest. Ask what advantage you already have: skill, relationships, local knowledge, energy, or time. Then start small. Find one real customer. Learn what they'll actually pay for. Improve the system before betting your savings on an idea. Barry has ignored all of this. His current business plan involves becoming wealthy before lunch. We wish him every possible success. Because the goal isn't finding a magical business requiring no work. It's building something valuable that can eventually require less of yours.